Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Let me ask you a question, and it's a serious question. I'm not being facetious towards these two fighters. I just want to know your genuine opinion. Do you care anymore? Did you ever care about watching Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney? Now, we know they had that incredible car crash of a fight, which was great entertainment, but shrouded in PED allegations and hot tests and, people, Garcia coming in overweight, all this stuff. And in Times Square, at that awful card at Times Square on last Friday night, Haney fought like he was scared of getting breathed on, never mind hit, against Ramirez. But at least he won. And then Garcia lost to Romero, which I certainly didn't see coming at all. Definitely not. I thought Garcia would probably stop Rolly, but no. One put on a stinker of a winning performance, totally gun shy. The other guy didn't turn up, wandered around the ring like his mind was elsewhere. And so the proposed rematch of that, weird barn burner that they had has now been put on hold. But I have to ask this question, do you care? Bearing in mind what you've just seen. Now, look, Haney is someone who I always respected more than enjoyed watching because, let's be honest here, he did unify the lightweight division. And he did, I know a lot of people think Lomachenko beat him, but at the very least, he gave Lomachenko a good fight. Some people think he won, a lot don't. He twice went to Australia to beat George Kambosos in his home country. That followed the Kambosos' shock win over Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez, by the way, was the only one that emerged from that awful Times Square card with any credibility because he actually put on a very, very good performance indeed. But Haney, undisputed lightweight champ, I respect that. It takes some doing, and then he moves up and he bumps into Ryan, and despite all the soap opera that surrounded it, he nevertheless, he's supposedly still unbeaten because, of course, it was classed as a no contest. All right. And I don't have a problem with it being called a no contest. Garcia failed a PED test, and I know it was agreed, Haney rather stupidly agreed to let him come in 3 pounds overweight, but Haney contributed to his downfall. So I didn't have much sympathy with regards to the actual defeat in inverted commas itself. But calling it a no contest because of the failed PED test, I ain't got a problem with that at all. Not at all. But now I'm beginning to think, and I thought this after the Garcia fight, I thought, is Haney one of those fighters who peaks very, very early and then he's past his best by the time he's 28 or whatever? Because don't forget, this kid, I think his dad take him to Mexico to fight in like gym wars and in smokers or whatever they call smokers over in Mexico, and toughen him up as a 16-year-old. I mean, these are all miles on the clock. They talk about Wilfred Benitez being the youngest ever world champion at 17. By the time he was, 26, he was virtually finished. He was finished pretty much. Because if you start young, you rack up a lot of miles. Eventually, it just takes its toll. It's too much. And I'm wondering I thought I wonder if Haney's one of those fighters, and it's beginning to look like he kind of is. But certainly, even if there were no physical horrors left from that Garcia wreck, there's the psychological stuff still there. That was so evident. I mean, Ramirez was plodding after him. Jose Ramirez was plodding after him. It didn't look like he was trying to win. He needs to knock it on the head, Ramirez, because he's had two consecutive fights like that where he's just looked completely disinterested or completely lacking in any kind of ring IQ or ring imagination. But despite being as predictable gets, Haney still didn't do anything with him. He skirted around the ring, this way, that way, boom, 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 bouncing around, and don't come near me. Here's a jab. Yeah, okay, he won against a guy who just made one of the most feeble efforts, who looked like an old man in there. But there are ways of winning. I suppose the old saying, win now and look good later, that might apply. But is he going to look good later? in the case of Haney, I'm not so sure anymore. Now, as for Garcia, I mean, he might be one of those fighters who just runs on the energy of chaos, because he did look great ago. Oh, he's on PEDs, yeah, I know it. But at least he looked like he wanted to fight. I want to be there. I want to fight, whistling, left hooks all the time. And I mean, he nearly had Haney over in that fight in the first 20 seconds with a left hook, looking really, really like he's on it, like he wants to win, maybe he likes the chaos. And then when he gets straight, he's like, suddenly logic enters his head, and he's thinking, do I really need to get hit in the face when I'm making millions from social media, when I've made millions already? Do I really need this? Do I care whether I win? Do I really want to be a boxer in the golden ring? No. He'd probably thinking, bollocks to this. So give me those silk pajamas. Let me go back to bed. He might be thinking that. And regardless of what goes through the minds of both Haney and Garcia, regardless of where they are in their respective careers, the question, I'll get back to the original question. Do you care about seeing these guys either fight anyone else anymore, because you never know what you're going to get, or a rematch between the two of them? I mean, at least a rematch might sort of stir something in both of them. Pride might get the better of Haney, and he might think, I'm not running around the ring against this guy. I've got to get my revenge. On the other hand, Garcia might think, well, they called that a no contest. I smashed him up. I'm going to do it again. So you might get that chemistry, that sort of synergy comes together, of two fighters coming together. That might work. I'm not saying it will, but it might work. But against anyone else, I mean, do you want to see either of them face Teofimo Lopez? I think he'd knock either of them out. Do you want to see them, I don't know, who else we got? Do you want to see Rolly fight Devin Haney? No, it might be interesting. But I don't know. Let me think. Where do you think these guys are in their careers? And are you that fussed? I mean, if neither of them fought again, how much would you care? But one thing's for sure, I never want to see another card like that Times Square card. What a load of rubbish that was. Awful, awful card. And I don't entirely blame all those concerned for trying something new, because I think to try something new is great. When I was many years ago, when I was in bands, when I was writing songs, when I was recording a lot, I always had this fancy in my head that I would do a gig with my band in Trafalgar Square in London, because I love Trafalgar Square. I'm from London. I just thought it'd be fantastic to do a gig there. And it never came to fruition. But I like the idea of doing these weird and wonderful things, trying new things, but it just didn't work. The Times Square thing just did not work. And even though, you're sitting at home, you could feel the lack of atmosphere. And I wonder if that lack of atmosphere contributed to the non-performances of some of the fighters. Because we say, oh, it shouldn't bother them, the ring is you sort of zoned in the ring. And not really. The energy that can come from a crowd. I mean, we saw that with Ben and Eubank Jr. The energy, that incredible crackling electricity of energy, there's no doubt in my mind that pushed them both on to give absolutely everything. And there was no quitting either of them. But let me know about Haney and Garcia. What do you think? Do you have an opinion? Maybe you don't. I don't know. But, comments below. I'll give them a read, as usual. And thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, please hit the like button, because it's, takes a second. And subscribe. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we've got plenty more videos for you. All right, ladies and gents, thanks very much, and I will speak to you soon. Bye for now.